This was the first time I had ever heard the word life coach, the first time I had ever seen a life coach. That was the moment where I was like, oh, I think I want to be a life coach. Hey, you really need to get a handle on finances and your ability to, create an income for yourself, because you don't want to be at the mercy of a job or all these institutions that are telling you what to do. Hey, Courtney Sanders here. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new to me, I'm a full-time online life and business coach, as well as wife and mom. I wear all the hats and I do all the things. And I thought it'd be super fun to do a little story time. I keep seeing these story time videos come up and I'm like, I went in on the trend. I want to do a story time, but just simply a story time around how I actually knew I wanted to be a coach, because I didn't even know coaching was a thing. I didn't even know coaching existed. I didn't even know what you call this. And so I know a lot of people who follow me and look at my channel are very interested in transitioning into this career. Maybe you already work full-time in a particular career. Maybe you're very successful in what you do. Maybe you're an entrepreneur or a therapist. I see a lot of people in private practice or doing whatever, and it's like, this coaching thing looks so interesting. So here's a story time of how I knew that this was something that I wanted to do. So as I mentioned, I didn't even know coaching was a thing. I always had a bit of an entrepreneurial spirit and suspected early on that entrepreneurship was the path that I was ultimately going to take. I started to have suspicions that I was probably entrepreneurial in nature in my teenage years. Around 16, I started to get very interested in money and check out a lot of books from the library. One book that I always recommend even to adults is The Motley Fool's Guide to Investing for Teens. And I know it says for teens, but I'm always like, adults, even if you don't know anything about investing, you should totally read it, because it breaks things down in a way that's really easy and simple to understand. And so I really started getting fascinated with this concept, because I started to see that my parents' friends who were also very successful, my mom always did well in healthcare, and my stepdad was also an entrepreneur and ran his own business. They had a lot of also successful friends that would come over for dinner parties and different things. But there would be little whispers sometimes. So my parents like to throw these parties, and they would always tell the kids, hey, don't be in grown folks' business. Like, you need to get out of the kitchen and go into the den or go downstairs in the basement or whatever grown folks are talking. But because I was nosy and I was 16 and I wanted to be in grown folks' business, I knew that if I waited a little later in the party, maybe around 11 p.m. or midnight, after maybe a little bit of wine was flowing and everybody was feeling good and wouldn't necessarily notice that I was lingering in the kitchen, I could kind of mosey on in there and start to hear what was going on. And so I remember at one particular party, my parents were speaking with some friends of theirs really about a situation where the husband, his job was relocating him to a different state. But obviously he was married, he had his wife in the state that I grew up in, and his kids, and we're going to school there. And there was all this discussion about like how he was gonna have to get an apartment in a completely different state, and that they were gonna have to do this for 2 or 3 years going back and forth. And at the time, again, I was just 16, so I didn't know how the world works, but even now, in my 30s, I still feel like this was kind of crazy. I didn't understand why my parents' friend was willing to make that sacrifice to move, away from his family just to work a job. I couldn't understand why he either wouldn't apply for a different job or try to strike it out on his own. But that was the first time I started to get these little hints and whispers that like, hey, you really need to get a handle on finances and your ability to, create an income for yourself, because you don't want to be at the mercy of a job or all these institutions that are telling you what to do. So around that time, I started to check out books from the library, investing, entrepreneurship, just trying to figure out what it was. And so by the time I went to school, I had a full ride engineering scholarship. I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but my parents were saying, hey, if you want to be an entrepreneur, the way it works is you go through school, you graduate, you work full-time for a job for like 10 or 20 years. And then after you've learned enough at that job, then you can kind of break away and start a business on your own. So this idea that you would start a business while young was completely unheard of, and it wasn't something that I was like even taught to do. But I kind of kept that in my back pocket, and I said, okay, I'm gonna go get this engineering degree and we're gonna call it a day. But as fate would have it, Lisa Price, the founder of Carol's Daughter, came on campus one day, and she is a hair care mogul, and she created a hair care brand, and she told this really inspiring story of how she got her start. And hearing her, I realized, wow, I could start a business now. Like, I don't have to wait until I've worked for a corporation for 10 years. I don't even have to wait until I've graduated school. I could start a business now. And so that's what I did. A friend of mine who was a chemistry major, I was a chemical engineering major, we started this hair care business, and we were like, oh, we're going to be, the next Lisa Price, founder of Carol's Daughter. We're going to create a hair care company that is comparable to the hair care company Carol's Daughter. And so we promptly started buying all of these products from all over the world, like raw shea butter from Canada, all these different places, having it shipped in Nigeria, all this stuff, cooking it on hot plates in my little dorm room, or I had a internship that summer and, cooking it on the little small kitchenette in the little hotel that we were staying at. And so by the time I got back to school, we had about 100 units of these hair care products. And then promptly tried to sell them and realized that we know nothing about business and we know nothing about selling anything or making any money. And so I spent the rest of the semester really trying to figure this out. But unfortunately, because I was trying to push all this product, I wasn't going to class. And so it wasn't long before my grades started plummeting. And then I lost my scholarship. And so I was really scrambling, trying to figure out how to stay afloat. My parents were like, we don't know what to tell you. You're going to have to come back home and save up for school. And I was like, no, I'm willing to work. I wanted to stay in Washington, D.C., where I went to school. I loved the city. I wanted to stay. And so I didn't want to go back home. And so I really was just trying to figure it out. And again, as fate would have it, I actually had my name thrown in a hat for a women's business conference that was looking for young women who are interested in entrepreneurship. And so my school, some of the administrators knew that I was very interested in entrepreneurship because of some of the activities and extracurricular things that I was a part of. And so they nominated me, and I got chosen to go to this conference, even though my grades probably weren't at the level where I would have, otherwise been allowed to go. But because I was a referral, I got to go. And at this conference, they really rolled out the red carpet for us. It was about 20, maybe 30 of us young women. We were mostly undergraduates interested in entrepreneurship from schools all around the country. And they had all these different activities. They had us meet large corporations who had supplier diversity initiatives to support women-owned businesses. And we really got to see the behind the scenes of entrepreneurship from that perspective. And so one activity that they had for us was doing a life mapping exercise with a life coach. And so this was the first time I had ever heard the word life coach, the first time I had ever seen a life coach, but we got to go into her grand suite at this hotel that this conference was being held at. And she kept talking about all of these personal development books that really changed her life. And I was just enamored with this idea that you could make money and that you can make a living simply basically reading self-help books and helping people achieve their goals and doing vision boards and all of that. It just seemed like the most amazing thing ever. So she gave us an activity to go home where basically we were writing letters to ourselves, and she said she was going to mail it to us in a year to see if we achieved any of the goals that we said that we wanted to achieve in writing this letter. And she gave us a list of books that we needed to read and, just kind of send us on our way about different things that we needed to do from a personal development standpoint, not even from a business standpoint. And so I don't know if any of the other women, in my cohort really took her seriously, but I took it to heart and I went head first in every assignment that she gave us. In fact, I not only went head first, I was so committed to it and so gung-ho about it that I thought I would have a great idea by creating a blog to document my process as I implemented a lot of the strategies and read the books that the life coach recommended. And so that was actually the seed of my business. I was not trying to start a big coaching business or anything. I certainly didn't think that I could be a coach, but blogging was hot at the time. It was like 2009. And I was like, yeah, I'm just going to document what I'm doing and see if I can make a change. And so over the course of that year, that's exactly what I did. I remember getting on payment plans with my credit cards and getting on a budget and, getting my finances in order and working out consistently and getting back in school and waiting tables and paying off tuition and doing all of these things. And I documented it all on my blog. In fact, they're still on my website to this day. So if you go on my website and look at the blog section, you can still see a lot of those old blog posts and old articles where I was documenting this whole process. What I didn't know was that others were watching me, namely the same conference that I went to as a student. They were watching my blog and they had heard about all the progress that I was making, and they actually invited me back as a second year, but this time they invited me back as a student leader. And so I went as a student leader and I got to facilitate a lot of the activities for the new crop of young women that were coming in for this women's business conference. And then at the end of that conference, they invited me to submit an RFP, which stands for Request for Proposals. I didn't even know what that meant. And they were like, we were really impressed with what you're doing. If you want, we are looking for facilitators for the next year's round of this student entrepreneurship program. We would love it if you would submit a proposal for your business and see if you want to win the facilitation, contract for this conference that we're hosting next year. And I couldn't believe it because it was a multi-5-figure contract and I was barely 21 at the time. But that alone really let me know that this was like a career path that I could actually go down and that people would actually pay me for this. And I was like, wow, I really do want to be a life coach. Now, the conference was a nonprofit, and so this was around the first housing crash at that time. And so they ended up losing their funding and weren't able to do the student entrepreneurship program in the subsequent year. But the fact that they invited me to bid on a request for proposal and basically put me in the running where I could have won a multi-5-figure contract, that was the moment where I was like, oh, I think I want to be a life coach. I think, and again, I wasn't even sure. I was like, am I a life coach? Am I a trainer? Like, I'm not even sure what this title is, but whatever it is that I almost just succeeded at, that's what I'm going to figure out how I can do. And so I ended up graduating from school. I got a full-time job in federal government and banking and finance, but I continued to do this work on the side, really grasping at straws, trying to figure out how I could do this life coaching work and actually get paid for it. And so the rest is history. You've heard my story of how I came up with that self-discipline program and all the other things that really blew up. But that's my story time of the moment that I knew that I wanted to be a life coach. So I would love to hear from you. Go ahead and put in the comments below, what was the moment that you knew that you wanted to be a coach? And for everyone who wants to be a coach, but you're still not sure how to actually get the business off the ground, but you want to do great things, you envision yourself really having an empowerment empire, I invite you to join my flagship coaching program, the Next Big Name Bootcamp, which shows you how to do exactly that. Not only do we show you how to build a coaching program and a coaching business from A to Z, but we show you truly how to be a leader in your space and truly how to be the next big name in your industry. And so if that's something that sounds interesting to you, you can click the link below to learn more. And if you want, you can apply. And if we feel that you are someone we can help, we'll invite you to a call with one of our enrollment coordinators and get you all signed up. And so with that, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe. And if you can't wait for even more, make sure you're also subscribed to my podcast where I share even more story times about crazy things that are going on in my life at the moment. And if you can't wait for my next podcast episode or my next video, make sure you are following me on Instagram. It's CourtneyLSanders on Instagram. And with that, I'll see you in the next video. Bye.